So you're on a weight loss journey and you're doing everything right, but you still feel stuck, exhausted, bloated. This conversation will change how you see GLP-1s. Inflammation is the missing link, and it's part of the GLP-1 conversation that most people don't understand yet.
These medications shift inflammation in an incredibly powerful way outside of weight loss.
GLP-1s reduce inflammation, and that's where the real healing begins.
Massive inflammatory reduction like I have never seen.
That's exactly what I'm exploring today with McCall McPherson, founder of Modern Thyroid Clinic and Modern Weight Loss, physician assistant and nationally recognized expert in thyroid and hormone health.
It's a really, really exciting time in medicine for women with thyroid dysfunction.
So if you want to learn how to use a GLP-1 as a healing tool, you're in the right place. I'm Elizabeth McGann, your guide to doing GLP-1s the right way. To get our free How to Microdose Masterclass, just click the link in our episode description. I heard you saying recently, and I'm a big fan, I love your work, that GLP-1s are the biggest thing I will see in my lifetime in medicine. They will change medicine forever in a way that is completely unrelated to weight loss. What do you see as the most exciting non-weight loss outcomes of GLP-1 therapies?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's many, but I think at the core, there's a single root that drives so much of the improvement in all these other areas, which is massive inflammatory reduction like I have never seen in my practice. And I practice, functional medicine mixed with traditional medicine. So we work a lot on inflammation, but these medications shift inflammation in an incredibly powerful way outside of weight loss, completely independent of weight loss, which subsequently influences an infinite amount of chronic health conditions.
Absolutely. Yeah. Inflammation being the root cause of so many things. And I know you specialize in thyroid health, and also weight loss as well. You've got like two branches of your work. Am I getting that right?
You are. I started in thyroid. Modern Thyroid Clinic is like my baby. I've grown her up for almost a decade. And really, I never thought I would find anything that I'm as passionate about as I am with thyroid. But metabolic issues in women with thyroid dysfunction is a major, major thing that does not simply resolve with diet, with exercise, with fixing their thyroid. So, when GLPs came out, when they started being applied for weight loss, rather, they've been around for a couple decades, but I dove deep, and started implementing them in my practice. And what I saw was absolutely mind-blowing. And so, I continue to go deep. I get new studies that I read every day on them. And it's a really, really exciting time in medicine for women with thyroid dysfunction. And I think for people at large with the utilization of these meds on such a widespread level.
Yes, there's never been more options, I like to say. I feel like it's an exciting time for health, and certainly I call it a healing weight release journey, just at the focus being on health. And if we were just to unpack the biggest thing I will see in my lifetime in medicine, I mean, that's a big statement, GLP-1s. And just to even pull on that thread a little bit, I feel like these class of medications, peptides, they can be called, affect so much more than just regulating metabolism and weight loss. We're seeing people's blood pressure improve. We're seeing hormones improve. We're seeing, you're using them with thyroid patients, cardiac benefits, kidney, autoimmune. I mean, it goes on. And if we look at that, I mean, that's stunning. I mean, people that are on a GLP-1, is it possible that they would need less of their other medications?
Oh, goodness. Absolutely. I mean, one of the scariest side effects with GLP-1s is like blood pressure loss, it causing vision issues that can result in blindness. Well, that's all at its core. So much of it is due to a drop in blood pressure in a population of people that need a lot of blood pressure meds. And so if someone's being mindful of that and adjusting them appropriately, so much of that risk is eradicated completely almost. But I see reductions in thyroid medications, Certainly, I think these meds are the future treatment for cholesterol. They obviously already are a huge portion of diabetic treatment. Their impact is so far reaching. I mean, honestly, one of the most fascinating things about GLPs, like a pretty compelling statistic, is if you're on a GLP, you're 10 to 14% less likely to die, period. Doesn't matter if you get hit by a bus. It doesn't matter if you die of, stroke or cancer, whatever it is, you are 10 to 14% less likely to die on a GLP as compared to people who aren't, which is incredible, right?
Stunning.
And then you can break that down and look at all these different systems and the impact on almost every system. I mean, most every system I can think of, it impacts in a positive way. So I love that we are having these conversations now, because I think what the people are being fed is a lot of fear around these medications and like side effects, which are very well controlled when dosing is well controlled and the clinicians involved, right? When people aren't left to their own devices to manage this on their own. But people need to know the flip side of this conversation, which is these medications absolutely change the long-term trajectory of people's health outcomes and even the economic burden of our chronic health disease in this country.
Wow. So interesting. And also brings forward a scary understanding that a lot of times people are just, signing up for these meds through a portal. The doctor, perhaps, obviously, if it's legit, is overseeing it, but they're not meeting with a physician or a healthcare practitioner, the prescribing person, and they're not being monitored in the way that they would need to. Because you're saying that if they take them, especially with the more standard dosing, that a lot of their other health conditions will change and therefore their medication. And if no one's monitoring that, that could be a real problem.
Absolutely. Like drops in blood pressure, people who are already prone to, health conditions. But even like when I started our program, we started with standardized dosing, for example, right? We had patients with slews of side effects. We haven't ever had a single major side effect, but like people are uncomfortable with the side effects of these meds. They're losing weight too quickly. They're not eating food. So very early on, we were like, yeah, no, people are on too much medication. We need to reduce this medication. So then we started utilizing what's now called microdosing. That didn't exist for this kind of medication back then, but we quickly started reducing the doses and tailoring the doses to each individual person. Like, how are they responding? Do they actually need an increase? Should we really double their medication dose every 4 weeks? Because that's the standard approach. And when a clinician is hands off, that's inevitably what happens. They simply follow the escalation pathway that's laid out for them, right? In terms of the medication protocols. And then people can suffer from side effects and then rapid weight loss, which in my opinion, drives most every side effect that people hear about on the news and the media, are so heavily linked to people losing too much weight too quickly, not GLP-1 medications, peptides themselves.
So what are the red flags you see? You talked about dosing, the standard doses, how they can be too high, how you went from standard doses to now more custom doses, which I love. It's powerful. How does someone know? Because most people, we can say, are not microdosing. They might be at the most maybe just taking the starting dose with tirzepatide, Mounjaro, maybe they're at 2.5 and they're calling that a microdose, which maybe it still is. I mean, it's a low dose, but microdose really, in my understanding, is lower than that. And the ability to titrate up slowly between doses. But what are the red flags if someone is having side effects or they're not sure if they are or what's normal? They were kind of feeling bad before they started the med, so they're not sure what's a side effect. They're used to not feeling as good as they could. Which ones worry you the most for patient safety? What are those indicators that they're dosed too high?
I think the most worrisome thing for me as a clinician is when people aren't eating enough food. Like that's sort of the line in the sand. If they're not able to properly fuel their body with adequate protein, adequate micronutrients, they're losing, 2 to 3 pounds a week consistently. That's like a lot on an ongoing basis.
That's too much, 2 to 3 pounds, because a lot of people would think that maybe that's not even enough. They hear about these big drops and they think, oh, I'm not losing enough. But 2 to 3 pounds to me is a lot, maybe unhealthily if it goes over 3 pounds, right?
Yeah. And I mean, every once in a while, like every few weeks, initially people will lose a lot of weight because within 24 hours, their inflammation drops, right? And then that is a lot of water that's actually lost very
Oh,
quickly. Some people lose 8 to 10 pounds in the first week. That's not
wow.
really, yeah, yeah.
From inflammation.
Oh, absolutely. So these meds within hours, like
And
people report inflammatory drops within hours, but I actually documented, I was testing everyone at 6 to 12 weeks, seeing massive reductions in their HSCRP, an inflammatory marker that can be measured easily in your blood. Research came out about 6 to 9 months ago that also validated my findings of, hey, in 6 weeks inflammatory markers are dropped. But I took a patient on one microdose and did a before and after, a single microdose of a GLP, and her CRP went from 11 to just at 4
oh my
in
goodness.
1 week on a microdose. Yeah. So within hours, people lose inflammation. With that comes that water, that puffy
Mm,
water weight that so many of us carry, especially thyroid people.
mm.
That evaporates. So, initially people can lose a lot of weight, but they should not be sustaining that high amount of weight loss over and over and over again. I think 3 pounds a week perpetually is too much. And I think you can gauge it by, look, how much protein are you getting? Are you eating enough vegetables, micronutrients, or are you barely like just stuffing your face to get the bare minimum in? Because the reality is a lot of these people are eating 3 to 500, 600 calories a day, especially if they're on a normal standardized dose. And that's not okay for a plethora of reasons.
Yeah. So one of the biggest red flags would be losing weight too fast, which
Mhm.
may also indicate that you're maybe also losing muscle in addition to
Mhm.
that initial water weight that eventually levels off after the first week or so.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So if you're after the first week, you're losing more than 2-3 pounds, that would be a red flag that your dose too high.
hmm And people think, they should be losing 2 pounds a week. I consider a stall, technically, like in our program, less than a half a pound of weight loss per week for at least 3 weeks in a row. That's like, hey, that's an actual stall. If you don't feel like your medication is working from a symptomatic standpoint, from a weight loss standpoint, then maybe it's time to increase. But people don't need to, I mean, the slower you lose weight, the less muscle you'll lose, the more success you'll have long term, that. So we aim for that as much as people would love to lose it quicker.
Yeah. And do you work with people both on the standard doses or are you compounded mostly because of the specificity you can get with dosing?
Yeah, we do not use any standardized medication simply because I don't think people should be using diabetic doses of medication for weight loss. And I'm not even honestly convinced the diabetic dosing is appropriate and not too high also for them.
That's stunning. I want to unpack that more. Well, let's get back to that because that is
Yeah.
what you did. You just said a lot there, and that's so interesting. Other than losing weight too fast, people get worried about, certainly muscle loss, but sometimes it's hard to tell if you're losing muscle. We hear about Ozempic face,
Mhm.
and I've brought on other people that talk about. Some people are pointing that it's not just the rapid weight loss that comes from losing weight; that anyone's face gets thinner as they lose weight. They lose a lot of weight. They're going to have that look. Ozempic face is technically just rapid weight loss. Some people want to say that it's more than that, that it's
Mm.
that they're losing muscle maybe in their face or there's something that's causing a change in the skin itself. What are your thoughts on that first? Is that dose dependent? Is that even happening?
I think there's two perspectives. One is, hey, look, if you lose weight, it kind of ages us. People that have full faces look younger, and that's the deal. So as we lose weight, we're going to lose some of that fullness, which is going to age us. But outside of that, I think with rapid weight loss, our skin can become more lax. Absolutely. I think too, when people are eating a bunch of carbs every day because they feel nauseous, they don't want to eat food, so they're only eating the foods that they want to eat and not nutrient dense, protein heavy foods. Their body's looking for fuel, right? And it's pulling it from fat to burn, but it can also pull from muscle, from collagen, and truly that can lead to Ozempic face. Now, I think if you're not losing weight rapidly and you are fueling your body, listen, there are muscle protective compounds in GLPs, things that protect your muscle. And studies have clearly shown that weight loss in a very controlled environment with rats on a GLP versus not, if they're fed the exact same thing, they lose the same weight, the muscle loss is the same. So people are not losing more muscle on a GLP, they're losing more weight and therefore losing more muscle. But you can easily build muscle while losing fat on a GLP, probably easier than you could do without it in terms of building and retaining muscle. So I think there's a truth to it. But I think when things are done well, when people are not on this zero nutrient, low protein, nutrient devoid diet and rapid weight loss, I think that that's very few and far between that we actually see Ozempic face, Ozempic butt muscle loss. Again, muscle loss is literally due to your body's looking for something to burn for energy and you don't have enough resources and fuel that you're eating, so it's scavenging everywhere else. Very similar with hair loss. Most people that do not have rapid weight loss do not lose hair, though I have found one study that does show some amount of atypical hair loss in rare cases with a GLP, but I haven't actually seen that in my clinical practice.
Thank you for that. I loved what you said there about that GLP-1s can actually protect muscle. I don't hear that a lot, and that you could have better luck gaining muscle on a GLP-1 than you would without it. What I do see, and I work with a lot of people with their doctors on a GLP-1, and we have them, measure everything, body composition analysis, make them, train, strength training, all the stuff. And what I'm seeing for the people that do, and I think it's important for the listeners to know that we're seeing people certainly maintain their muscle mass, even as they're losing weight, but even gain muscle and liking the shape of their bodies. And it's the weight loss they want, meaning they're losing fat, not muscle. And it's possible.
Amen. I love to hear that from you as someone who, works on the lifestyle part, works with these people to achieve their goals in a realistic, supported way, because you're not prescribing them. But I love that you can still, I see these benefits. I see this happening in my clinical practice. I think that's incredibly valuable for people to hear.
What are best practices? Someone's listening to this and they're like, okay, I'm taking notes. I want to do everything right. I don't want to lose my hair. Even if I'm one of the outliers that is going to have, I'm eating the protein. That said, am I going to lose my hair? What could they do?
So I do not see that happen in our practice. Now, initially, when we use standardized dosing and realized pretty quickly, this is not working algorithm for these people. We saw hair loss, but very, very quickly after we've, switched our dosing protocols almost 3 years ago, we don't see it. So obviously, think about your body. Mm-hmm. If it's searching for fuel, are you giving it enough fuel? Or is it going to have to pull from alternative sources? If you are giving it enough fuel, heavy protein, I have my people drink green juice, not smoothies, but pressed green juice. And what that means is you can fit 5 or 6 pounds of veggies into an 8 to 12 ounce serving. So essentially you are flooding your body with so many micronutrients, days worth of micronutrients in one little serving without fiber. So it's very easy to absorb. So if you're having a little absorption issues, it just floods your system, and that will give you so many of the micronutrients your body needs for hair loss. I also say, take a hair loss supplement. Nutrafol is a great one. Topically, I love OneSkin. I work with them as a brand ambassador, but I love their topical water-soluble drops that you can put on your scalp that don't make it oily. You can easily do it twice a day. I love minoxidil. Topically or even orally for women. If we're going all out, I would use a microdose of minoxidil orally, topical minoxidil, OneSkin topically, Nutrafol, and then balance that diet. And that is the biggest winning game plan, not only for lack of hair loss, but you'll probably grow some hair in the process.
So cool. OneSkin. Tell me just a little bit more about that. That's new to me. It's a topical that you put on. How does it work?
Yeah, it's interesting. So it's different mechanism of action than any other kind of topical mechanism. They use a unique peptide called the OS1 peptide that reverses the activity of what's called senescent cells. So they have skin products, but they also have a hair product. And part of age-related hair loss is senescent cells that become non-functional and they almost spread like a cancer. Not cancer, but they're contagious. You can think about them in that way. And that is directly associated with age-related hair loss. So they're scientifically kind of think about as reversing the age of your scalp. they are able to do the same thing with their skincare as well, which is, I mean, it's pretty remarkable. I've used them for close to 3 years now, and their products are amazing.
Thank you. I know people are taking notes. And minoxidil, I know just a little bit about that because that's a prescription. And I heard you say microdosing it.
Yeah, so there's two forms.
Okay.
There's like an oral form that is a prescription. Usually comes in like a 5 milligram. You would split that in half and do about 2.5 milligrams. You can get it from your doctor prescribed or places like hers, that kind of thing, also does prescription minoxidil. And minoxidil, like the topical form that isn't a prescription, both create almost like a vasodilation. It allows blood to circulate throughout your body, and it keeps your hair follicles very, very healthy. It can increase the thickness of your hair follicles and your hair shaft. It can prevent the dormancy of your hair follicles. So you can do it orally, and it's like in a significantly higher impact, but it's systemic. So you could probably grow hair a little more quickly, like you'll have to shave your legs more often, et cetera. Or you can use it topically and put it specifically on your hair, either your whole head or like the specific areas you're concerned about, and it will create more hair growth, more widening of those hair shafts. It works great. It's cheap no matter where you get it from. Very well tolerated. It was initially a blood pressure medication. Doesn't really work for blood pressure. Works great for hair growth. So a lot of wins. I haven't ever had a patient stop it from side effects. So it's super well tolerated. And yeah, I use it with a lot of my patients.
Knowing that a lot of these side effects that we're talking about might come from just being on a dose that's too high, why do you think that there's this over-prescribing trend? Is it just the standard of care that most physicians don't question? I'm just curious because it feels like if people are, the lowest effective dose just makes a lot of sense. And in medicine, you see prescribing doctors keeping that in mind. Why do you suppose, what's driving the overprescribing?
I think, look, like these meds came out 20 plus years ago for diabetes. They were originally used for diabetes. They work very well for diabetes. And along the way in those trials, they began to notice, oh, these people are losing weight. Like they're losing a lot of weight. This is working amazing, even though that's not what we were actually initially using them for. I wonder if we should try them for weight loss. So they simply rebranded an existing medication for a new purpose or indication. So the dosing remained exactly the same. And it worked for the diabetic people. So surely the weight loss will work for regular people. And because of the complexity in preloaded pens in people, kind of for the first time outside of diabetics, giving themselves injections at home, which is like a learning curve. If you have to take that out of a vial and teach someone how to inject air so the volume stays the same and it doesn't create an air vacuum, like it's very complicated. A preloaded pen, quite easy for these people, right? And so there's not a lot of variation. In addition to that, secondarily, unfortunately, I think when these meds came out for weight loss, there was a lot of effort that went into kind of fear propaganda around compounding pharmacies.
Sure.
And, not all compounding pharmacies are amazing. I get that. But when you're dealing with injectable compounded medications, the approval process for compounding pharmacies to actually get that license to be able to do that is incredibly intense and complicated and painstakingly particular, right? So they're not just giving these licenses out like candy. There's a lot of things that have to be in order to make that happen. So the vast majority of them are held to incredibly high standards and are very, safe and effective. Now, I would never recommend people get these on like the gray market or the black market because I think that's a totally different deal. Yes. But I view compounded meds, and we use high quality compounding pharmacies, as very safe and honestly quite effective. And they do provide the dosing variants that so many people need to get the weight loss they want without the side effects.
100%. Yes. And I won't go into my whole kind of diatribe on, it's the competition of it's cutting in on their profits. Compounding and pharmacies have been around forever. Functional doctors, integrative practitioners have been using them for years. It's, yeah. So thank you for what you said. Hopefully that will make people feel more comfortable to use a reputable compounding pharmacy, and they can always do their research and find what those are. What you just pointed out is really interesting. So what I heard you say is that why maybe these have been overprescribed is they were originally diabetes drugs. And what I've noticed is that people that have more metabolic dysfunction might be closer, they're pre-diabetic, they're diabetic, is that they sometimes do need more of the peptide. That people that are more metabolically healthy, and there's ways to get people more metabolically healthy, tend to be this unicorn super responder. People tend to think super responders, people that respond really well to lower doses, they're like, oh, maybe it's just genetics, we're not sure why. I think there probably is some reason why, and maybe it's metabolic, they're just healthier. That said, are you noticing that people that are more metabolically not healthy, do they need larger doses?
Good question. I love that. So what I do find is those people take longer to start losing weight. Like, think about it almost like there's a bigger gap to bridge. So we have to unravel more leptin resistance, more insulin resistance, more blood sugar dysregulation before they start to lose a lot of weight. Now, they often will lose weight up front because they have a lot of inflammation, right? Insulin inherently is inflammatory. They're insulin resistant. Their levels are high. They're high throughout the day. So initially they'll lose weight, but then it's a slower continued weight loss. And so what that means is kind of similar to exactly what you're saying. We increase their doses more before they start to lose weight. We still use microdosing. We still only titrate them up when needed, but they usually need to be titrated sooner. And they usually need to hit a higher dose before they can start to lose continued weight. So I kind of agree.
Are you also working with them on their nutrition, blood glucose management, not just relying on the medication as well?
You know it, sister. Yeah, you know it. My favorite people to use these meds with, and initially who we use them with so much at Modern Thyroid Clinic, was women who, and men too, but like 99% of our patients are women, but women who do all the things already. Like, they have a great lifestyle, they eat well, they exercise, but they cannot lose weight. And it's like, it's true. These women, the effort that they are putting in is not equal to the outcome that should be happening. And so I love to put people like that on those meds because they already have the pillars in place. At Modern Weight Loss, our sister company, people are coming in outside of, the confines of Modern Thyroid Clinic. They've never been exposed to our work, our brand, et cetera. So we absolutely are working with them on diet, on, hey, what types of exercise are actually best for people on GLPs? What does a good diet look like for these people? Because honestly, it's different than people who potentially aren't on GLPs, and it needs to be done intentionally.
Yeah. Do you find that when they make shifts in their nutrition and those shifts allow them to be in a healthier metabolic range, they can take less of the medication? Do you see what I'm getting at? My hypothesis is, if someone is pre-diabetic and their A1C is 5.7, 5.8 higher, and they haven't reversed that through diet and lifestyle, which you can do, they would need, based on what you're saying, to maybe a higher starting dose and to titrate up faster. Would it also make sense that if someone works on that through nutrition and gets their A1C from 5.8 to a more normal range, 5.5, 5.4, they do that all through lifestyle, nutrition, et cetera, would that allow them to take less of the peptide? Does that correlate?
It does. And what it really kind of correlates with is what we do that's a little different, both at Modern Thyroid Clinic and Modern Weight Loss with GLPs, is we work to get these people off of these meds. Like, most of our patients actually transition off. And I don't share like the exact numbers that we're looking for. It's like the one thing I hold, like, from a proprietary perspective, but we look for certain numbers with hemoglobin A1C, with leptin, with insulin, with blood sugar. And when people get to those numbers, they start to reduce their meds. They can taper off meds. They can switch to metformin for a little while, but the need of these medications for them to be able to maintain their weight with proper exercise, with proper nutrition, not like over restricting, over exercising, doing everything right to not gain 5 pounds. They can do it in a realistic way and successfully come off. And number one, when people have their lifestyle in check, they hit that point so much faster. But number two, people that don't have those pillars in order, when they come off of these meds, they're going to likely end up back in the same position they were in if they don't have their lifestyle in perspective. And the beautiful thing about these meds is it's a great time to overhaul your entire diet plan, to overhaul the way that you're thinking, the way that you look at food. And it just changes so much in our neurochemistry about how we look at food, how we look at eating, that it is an incredibly powerful opportunity for people to come in and completely change their habits and set them up for success long term.
I love that. I like to think of it as training wheels that you can put on someone to train new behavior. And I love that you take those training wheels off for certain people, that their lifestyle now can carry them and they can sustain it on their own. That's so inspiring, and not enough people are talking about that. Your personal journey, before we dive deeper, and I could talk about protocols and best practices, and I know people are taking notes, but it's also good to hear your story with both thyroid health and GLP-1s. How did your clinical and personal experience lead you to where you are today? And what insights has your personal healing journey given you that textbooks alone wouldn't?
I mean, I definitely think my entire practice of modern thyroid clinic, which now has so gratefully evolved to a nationwide telemedicine practice, started from my own personal journey of literally being a non-functioning 27-year-old who could not get my doctors to take me seriously and hear me, that I was having all of these thyroid symptoms, but just because I didn't fit into their tiny little box of what that looks like in terms of them only checking one of so many other labs that they should have been checking and telling me it's normal and that I need less of my thyroid medication, not more, not a different one. That completely set me up for my career because I had to find answers. And eventually I did. I found someone to help me who became a mentor, who changed the way I practice medicine. And inevitably over time that evolved into creating a safe place for women who were just like me, who have been told, your thyroid's not your problem, your hormones aren't your problem, go eat less, go exercise more. Basically, medicine had put them out in the cold and said, we don't believe you, good luck, go figure it out. And they were condemned to a lifetime barely surviving. I mean, I tell my patients quite often, I think I'd be on disability by now if someone hadn't helped me. And instead I have a thriving career and a beautiful family, a healthy life, a vibrant life, and I wouldn't have any of that. So, that's initially how it started. And again, I'm so incredibly passionate about thyroid because that was my journey. And those are the people I serve. But at the end of the day, after doing that for almost 10 years, I would help women, give them back their lives, completely change everything, but they could not lose weight with appropriate amounts of effort. And it killed me because you can change a woman's whole life, but if she does not feel like herself in her body, it's not enough. You know what I mean? Like that affects so much of the landscape of how we see the world, ourselves, our work, our home life. It just invades everything. Unfortunately, I wish it wasn't like that, but I'm a woman and it does. And so finding ways to solve that problem was like my last chapter of what I could offer my patients. And we did a pretty good job, not a great job at it before GLPs. And now we do an incredible job. And I feel like we give women the solution that they actually deserve. And so that's kind of what led me into GLPs. I took them microdosing for a few months. I want to start again. A year and a half ago, I had like a tragedy with my daughter, her health declined, and I just couldn't eat like for months. And so obviously I could not do it then. I still haven't completely rebounded to my normal weight. So I'm close. And when I get there, I can't wait because I'm an inflamed person. Like, the reason I focus on inflammation so much is because I struggle with it. And it's incredibly, incredibly powerful and life-changing for people that struggle with inflammation.
Thank you for sharing your story. You can feel the passion, and I know you're helping so many people. And for people that might think to themselves, oh, my thyroid, I don't suffer from thyroid, or maybe I do. They're not quite sure. Well, just tell us a little bit more about how the thyroid works for people that struggle with their thyroid, but also for maybe that spectrum of people that they're not sure if it's their thyroid.
Yeah. It's a great question. Thanks for incorporating this into the conversation because I think people listening to this should also be armed with thyroid information. So your thyroid impacts basically everything in our physiology, and it is an incredibly common condition to end up with thyroid dysfunction if you're a woman. Less common with men, but still very common. And it leads to fatigue and brain fog and weight gain and hair loss and high cholesterol and high blood sugar and low libido and depression and constipation, dry skin, brittle nails, brittle hair, a cold intolerance. Like, it leads to a lot of things. And the problem is, I kind of describe it as our current paradigm for thyroid in medicine right now, in my opinion, is the next women's health initiative. For so long, we condemned hormone replacement therapy with women. We left a generation of women, again, out in the cold for solving a problem that could have protected their long-term health outcomes in such a big way. And we are doing that right now in the world of thyroid. We are waiting until people are a decade plus into this disorder when year 1 and 2, people start to have infertility, depression, high cholesterol, heart disease, fatty liver, insulin resistance, all of these issues that impact our chronic disease burden later on, the economy of our country and the chronic disease burden. So many of them are tied to poor thyroid function. And what's happening in the world of medicine is women are going to doctors just like I did and said, I have all these symptoms of hypothyroidism. Doctors are not doing enough tests. They're telling people they're normal based on wildly inadequate data. They're not looking for Hashimoto's. They're just doing a horrible job. They're putting people on a medication, levothyroxine, Synthroid, tyrosine, it's all the same medication. One class of medication 89% of people are on. It doesn't work for the vast majority of people. And again, they're like, well, you're on thyroid meds, so your TSH looks okay. It's not your thyroid. It must be something else. Thyroid symptoms could be anything. They're non-specific. Well, they're not. If someone is on thyroid medication, they have persistent symptoms. If you look deeper, you can often find, oh, it is their thyroid. You just need to run the appropriate labs and not tell people, oh, it's not, just go eat less again, exercise more. That's what I was told. They tried to put me on Lipitor at 27 for my high cholesterol that was due to my thyroid. I'm like such a healthy person.
Yes. So people need to find out and work with a more of a functional approach, someone that understands proper testing, how to catch the signs that most doctors don't catch. If someone knows that they do have thyroid, hypothyroid, Hashimoto's, I've heard some people say, GLP-1s aren't for me. There's a black box warning, Elizabeth. You get thyroid cancer. Because of this black box warning, are GLP-1s a good idea for these patients?
So darn glad that you asked this question. So obviously, I'm invested in this conversation, right?
Yeah.
I really wanted to know early on, do I need to be concerned? Are my people really going to be at risk? So I dug into the data deeply, deeply, but I also was crazy. And I had my patients, every one, get an ultrasound every 3 months for years. Still, I offer it. I don't make it mandatory anymore. Never saw any nodule development, never saw anything concerning on ultrasound, period, full stop. And I want to tell you a little bit about the deal with, the black box warning. So the black box warning came about because when they studied these meds on rats, they noticed an increase in incidence of a specific kind of thyroid cancer called medullary thyroid carcinoma. It's one of the most rare forms of thyroid cancer. It accounts for about 3% of thyroid cancers, so obviously uncommon. The unique thing that was happening is rats, number one, have incredibly dense GLP receptors specifically on their thyroid. So they receive a lot of that medication locally here. Number two, they were given 20 to 100 times the human equivalent dose.
Whoa.
So number one, we aren't rats. Number two, we do not have dense GLP receptors on our thyroid. And number three, we do not take 20 to 100 times the human equivalent dose. So when you look at actual studies that compare people on GLPs to other diabetes medications, because these meds, again, they've been used for decades. This is not what you hear about on social media. Well, you just wait 10 years and 20 years and let's see what happens. No, we actually already have that data. People have been on these meds for 20 years. So when they compare GLPs and other diabetic medications, let's say insulin, metformin, there is no increased risk for GLPs and thyroid cancer of any kind in humans, including medullary thyroid carcinoma. In fact, it's been found that insulin is a higher risk for thyroid cancer than GLPs, and insulin does not carry any risk for thyroid cancer with using it. So I think it's important people know the difference. Now, would I put a patient of mine with a history of medullary thyroid carcinoma, or if her mother had medullary thyroid carcinoma? I wouldn't. But do I have patients with plenty of other forms of thyroid cancer in their history on these meds? I absolutely do. Do I have patients with Hashimoto's on them? Absolutely, including people with hypothyroidism as well. In fact, these meds can reduce Hashimoto's antibodies. I've seen them put people into remission. They reduce the medication burden for thyroid patients. Like, they have so many benefits. I don't want people stuck on this black box warning because of studies that were done on rodents.
It would make sense. 20 times, you said, the standard dose, and the standard dose being much more than taking a low dose or a microdose. Like, the standard dose could be what, the higher doses of the standard doses. And you're saying 20 times that.
To 100 times that.
To 100 times that. And, everywhere in medicine, including supplements, the dose is the poison. That is, if you take a certain amount.
If you drink too much water, it's deadly, So everything is dangerous in excessive amounts.
Well, that is really good to hear. And it's also good to, be cautious. And this thyroid being your specialty, it's really good to hear from you, who has thought about this a lot and tests for all of this. Let's talk about this. I find this is interesting. So desensitization, or rebooting the effectiveness of a GLP-1, you often hear about people, especially the people that are not doing all the things, working on the nutrition, the protein, the lifestyle, the sleep, working on their health, their labs, all the things. But that said, you still hear about people going up in dose and feeling like it stops working at a certain point, and then they need to go to a higher dose. And is there a way, in your clinical experience, do GLP-1s lose their effectiveness over time? Do you become desensitized to them? And if so, is it possible to reboot or resensitize the body to recapture their benefit long term? What are your thoughts on that?
Great question. Very practical. So I do think that that's a reality. I absolutely see that in my clinical practice. Some strategies that I use to work around that people could utilize and kind of harness. Number one, I kind of like to start with semaglutide, which hits on one main receptor, and take people progressively through that, especially if they have larger amounts of weight to lose. If it's just a little work here and there, it's not like a huge metabolic dysfunction overhaul. But I like to start with semaglutide. And as people age out of each dose, the key is riding each dose of no matter what medication you're on as long as possible until it becomes ineffective. Don't increase and double your dose every 4 weeks just because that's what the treatment algorithm says to do. You are going to max out on the effectiveness of that medication so much quicker that way. Most people can ride each dose out so much longer than 4 weeks. Some people never increase after the first dose. Some people increase every 3 or 4 months. It's unique, which is why finding someone who will work with you to tailor it is best. So that way, instead of, hitting the max dose in maybe 2 years, you hit it in 5 years. And then if semaglutide quits working, I will then move people to tirzepatide, which hits on multiple receptors and tends to be a little more potent. I prefer, if all's even, to not start with tirzepatide. I find it's too strong for people. They don't eat enough food. They lose too much of their appetite. So if I can, and again, it's all unique for each individual person, but I like to save tirzepatide until they've maxed out of semaglutide. Then that almost starts over again. Sure, they might need a little more increases up front, but that effectiveness stays with them longer. If they hit a plateau and they don't want to increase their medication, or they've reached the max, I will layer in metformin, which can amplify or get them out of a plateau. And then I'll take med breaks, 6 to 12 weeks. Med breaks can really reboot effectiveness. And again, they usually need a little more increases on the microdoses up front, earlier than someone who's like novel to the medication. But those are some strategies that I use and work very well in clinical practice.
And med breaks are interesting because they're getting so much support from the peptide that's doing a lot of things for them, their metabolism and et cetera. when they take a break, a hard stop from the meds, like they'll come straight off of it, not titrate off, you would just have them stop?
It depends. Like it kind of is unique for their journey, what they prefer.
Okay. So based on each person is unique, when they've stopped, what lifestyle interventions can they do to benefit from being stopped?
Yeah. The key here in healing and reversing metabolic dysfunction is insulin sensitivity, leptin sensitivity, managed blood sugar. So you want to have them kind of already in a lifestyle to support and facilitate that. So things like intermittent fasting, they could start when they stop the meds. I don't like people intermittent fasting while they're on a GLP. It gets harder to get enough food, but they can absolutely intermittent fast when they stop. They can do something called, like I use the term my food flow formula, where they lay the foundation with protein, fibrous veggies that are low glycemic index before eating carbohydrates. I often have people save carbohydrates towards the end of the day and only eat protein, nutrient-dense veggies for breakfast, lunch. And so their blood sugar stays as low as possible, as long as possible throughout the day. Spikes more in the evening, only after they've eaten protein, fiber, so less of a spike. And then they can reset that blood sugar all over at nighttime again. Also, this is where lifestyle comes in, right? Like you set your habits while you're on the GLP to support you when you're not. Lifting weights, building muscle mass, all of those things. Think of your muscle like a sponge for sugar. So the more muscle mass you have, the less volatile your blood sugar spikes will be, the less your blood sugar will raise, the less insulin your body will require to maintain adequate blood sugar, the less your leptin will become resistant. And all of those things work on healing your metabolism, even though you're not on a GLP, because at the core, that's what we're working on so that long term you can eat well, exercise, and elicit the appropriate response.
Very good. And so if they do those things and then they restart the medication, do they start at a lower dose than they went off, or can they start from the beginning again and gradually move up?
They can start from the beginning again. Yeah.
Wonderful.
They gradually move up. They usually need more, more soon increases than someone who's never taken it. But definitely they start. The goal is always preserving the lowest possible dose effectiveness as long as possible.
Amazing. Oh gosh, there's so much we could talk about. I'm gonna just try to focus here. The future of GLP-1s and medicine. How do you hope the prescribing protocols for GLP-1 will evolve over time? And what reforms, guidelines, or paradigm shifts do we need to see in medicine to prevent people doing the wrong things, over medication, not educating patients?
Yeah, I think inevitably we will adjust the dosing parameters to be smaller. I think that will happen. I really do. It takes time though, right? For like these major pharmaceutical companies to conduct, run, get approval on clinical trials and do the whole deal, it takes years. And so that's not going to happen for a long time.
And let me just interject something. It also takes education in things that traditionally medicine doesn't teach. Nutrition, lifestyle, sleep, stress. We don't have time for that conversation.
I know. That has to change. And I think it is changing, not necessarily in like the clinician standpoint, like our whole medical system. What people don't understand is clinicians have like 8 to 12 minutes to see you, right? They don't have time to talk about nutrition and exercise. We're not even really trained in that, so we don't even feel equipped to talk about it in our formal medical training, right? So I think we're a ways out from that. But what I do think is happening is people are realizing at this point, our medical system is not set up to make them healthy, to give them wellness. It is set up to solve problems, which is great. It's incredibly powerful for cancer, for acute care, for surgery, for trauma, but it doesn't make us thrive. And so I think people are realizing that now, and they're looking to coaches, to health coaches, to nutritionists, to functional medicine providers to go deeper, to actually be well, because that's what we deserve. We will never thrive taking a blood pressure medicine and a diabetes medication and doing all the things that our traditional medical system is set up to help us. We will survive, but we're not going to thrive from those things. So what I hope is more and more clinicians incorporate in the health coaches, the nutritionists, the other people that we need on our team to help facilitate this. We rely extremely heavy on health coaches in our program. They're invaluable. We couldn't do what we do. We couldn't get the outcomes that we get without them. So I hope that is the case. And the other thing that I hope is, look, like GLPs need to be approved for so much more than diabetes and weight loss. You know, they reduce fatal heart cardiovascular events by 26%. They reduce cancer, major cancers, by 40 to 60%. They reduce mortality of people who've already had cancer by 10 to 15%. So we need to, they reduce the progression of autoimmune disease, you know, whether it's osteoarthritis or MS, or, I mean, we haven't studied Hashimoto's, but I'm definitely seeing that. But there's lots of studies in other autoimmune diseases. We need access for these people because these medications are so powerful for all of this. We need access through insurance and microdosing outside of insurance for more than just weight loss and diabetes.
Amen. Thank you so much for being here and taking time to do this podcast. To end on a forward-looking note, what are the most exciting things you see on the horizon for yourself, for this space in the next 18 months?
Yeah. So, I mean, just thinking about how far we've come in the last 18 months from GLPs, felt like I was fighting an uphill battle, even in my functional medicine realm, of people really negatively speaking about GLPs and looking at people utilizing them in negative ways. I feel like we've done a 180. I feel like now we're beginning better, deeper, more real conversations around these meds. So I'm excited about that. I can't imagine where we'll be in another 18 months because I think we're on an incredible trajectory. You know, personally, I have a book coming out in 2027 that I'm so excited about.
Hey,
it's on thyroid. I know.
Say it again. A book. It's coming out when?
2027. I got a publishing deal with Penguin Random House, and I'm so excited. And it's going to be so much fun. So I'm like working diligently on that to come to fruition and finalizing my title in the next few days. I already finished my manuscript. So that's like, it seems so far, but it's so close on the horizon for me. So I'm so excited about that.
Oh, I can't wait to read it. Congratulations. 2027. Thanks. It'll be here before we know it.
It will. I'm excited to have a fresh start, think about, you know, what we want to make happen in 2026, how we want to serve our people better and different in 2026. It's just a constant evolution. So it's a great time to just reset and consider that.
Very good. All right. Well, we'll say goodbye for now.